Welcome to Big Blend Radio with your hosts, Lisa and Nancy, editors of BigBlendMagazine.com.
Hey everybody, welcome to Big Blend Radio. You know, every first Friday, we air our Toast to the Arts Parks, and this is a collaboration with our friends over at the National Parks Arts Foundation, and they do awesome work. They have this artist in residence program where artists can submit, or should they submit? I don't like the word submit, but they apply. How about that? To being an artist in residence in a national park unit across the country, places like Hawai'i Volcanoes National Park, Chaco Canyon, Dry Tortugas National Park in Florida Keys, where you get to have your own island. It's pretty amazing. And so every first Friday, we either chat with everybody at NPAF or one of the artists in residence. Sometimes it's park rangers. And today we are going to Hawaii to chat with Ian Kuali'i. I hope I'm getting this right, Ian, but welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you very much. Yes, it's Kuali'i, but it's close enough.
Kuali'i. No, it is. Kuali'i.
Kuali'i.
Kuali'i. I'm going to.
There you go.
It's
okay.
Perfect. There you go.
Kuali'i. Yeah. Okay, yes. I'll get this. I'm sorry, but I love learning new language. Is there a meaning to your name?
So Ku is one of the like four major deities within sort of the pantheon of gods within Hawaii. So okay. Ku, and then Ali'i just means chief. And so I come from like a high chiefly line of the Kuali'i line. And yeah, so it's just sort of like a marriage between the two. Or Ku also can mean to like stand firm in like your convictions or beliefs and things of that nature.
Ooh, that goes with your art. That's kind of cool.
Right.
Having integrity, Ali'i, yeah.
Totally. Cool. So, and then Ali'i, of course, just like the chiefly portion of it all. Yeah.
Don't mess with him, Nancy. He's the chief.
He's
so sweet. I'm like,
I'm a mellow person.
Okay, cool. So where were you born?
I was born actually in Southern California in the city of Fullerton, downtown Fullerton.
Okay. Oh yeah,
in Orange County. But I was raised back and forth between Southern California and primarily the island of Maui. So I grew up, between the two, Orange County, California, Maui County, and on the island of Maui, I was pretty much raised between Haiku and Makua, which is upcountry, which actually the National Parks Arts Foundation has the artist residency in Haleakala as well. And so like basically on the slopes of Haleakala is kind of where I grew up. And then also my family lived in an area called Happy Valley, which is in Wailuku town, just down the way from Keapaniwai, which is like one of the main areas over by Iao Valley. And, yeah.
You have a Happy Valley. We had a Happy Valley.
We had a Happy Valley.
In Port Elizabeth, where we lived, we had a Happy
Valley. In South Africa.
Yeah, in Port Elizabeth.
Happy Valley.
It was like this park, like literally a park outside
with
of the
a lot
city.
of art.
And just like little waterfall. It was magical. Yeah. It was this little oasis you'd go for and just go for a stroll or, you know, it was just this cool place. It was called Happy Valley. Yeah. And it's like, let's go to Happy Valley. I mean, it's just a nice sound, you know?
So the Happy Valley that my family lived in on the island of Maui, it's like an older sort of community. There's actually a bunch of land there that are sort of designated. Well, I mean, it's built up now around it. And I think a lot of the original Hawaiian families that were there had Kuleana land parcels. And I think it's somewhere along the lines, like some of the families sold off the land. But it literally is nestled along the edge of the river there, or stream there, that spills out into the ocean further down. And so as children, we would go and we would go and like fish for crawdads and, you know, just play in the stream. And that was a beautiful experience growing up.
So you had a connection to nature through that?
Oh, always. Well, I mean, I've always had sort of this connection with nature. I was always like a tree climbing, tree loving, you know, sort of individual. Matter of fact, I was like having a conversation with my friend Lehua Uakea, who's an amazing Kanaka kapa maker. So like bark cloth making in a traditional way. And And, you know, we were having a conversation about how we, you know, well, their relationship with trees because they make bark cloth, but our relationship as well of having this love for like climbing trees, you know, still to this day, but even more so as we were younger. So yeah, I've always had this like, you know, direct connection and reverence for nature in general. Yeah.
I think it's when you go out and looking at your art, and you're a multimedia artist, and what you're doing with the paper cuts. I mean, this is incredible work. I mean, Nancy, you're looking at this today going, it's like almost, Nancy's an artist too. And it's kind of like what you did with Scratchboard. Is that what you were saying?
Yeah, with Scratchboard. Have you ever used that medium, Scratchboard?
I have. It was more so during like, for like school assignments. So, you know, like, yeah, of course. Yeah. And then like, you know, copper plate etchings and stuff like that as well. Right. So it's the same sort of process of, I guess, like, I don't know, depending on what your perspective is, negative space or positive space. Right. And figuring out like the extractive elements that need to take place in order for the image to be rendered properly. Right.
Yeah. Well, so, Scratchboard, I drew in pen and ink for a long time. And then Scratchboard was like the opposite. What used to be black ink was now white chalk. And what used to be the white background became the black background. So I had to like reverse my mind. It was an interesting exercise. And I was remember thinking, okay, I got to think opposite the whole time. And it was interesting. It's a delicate medium to work in, as far as you can't really like press too hard, and you have to be delicate, and you have to think opposite, but it's worthwhile doing.
Right. I mean, that's sort of, I mean, exactly that. So one of my mother's partner, sort of like my stepfather, is Apache Chicano master printer named Emmanuel Montoya. And so we've had a lot of discussions around that, about how, you know, initially you begin your studies in illustration, like just basic drawing, right?
Yeah.
And so you're thinking like it's application on a paper or surface, right? And then this way it's totally different. Like, well, it's same thing, but you have to think in reverse. Instead of outright rendering an image that you would view in sort of like the positive, like you have to think in the reverse in order for you to make the thing happen. And so for me, like the idea of just taking like a pristine piece of white paper, and then having to cut and extract all the hard line elements, so it works out, and so, you know, the image is identifiable, you know, it's a super interesting way of thinking about it. It also goes into like what you're saying about, it's a very delicate medium, right?
Yeah.
You have to, your intentions have to be pure when approaching it. You have to be patient with yourself with it, because you, like with cutting, it's not like a pencil line. You can't erase
you can't erase it. Yeah,
you can't erase it.
Done.
So,
it's
right.
done.
And you know, like fortunately, I've only destroyed, I guess, or like cut. I won't necessarily say destroyed, but have hit cuts where things have fallen apart or whatever. Only a handful of times throughout my whole practice of doing this. But yeah, it teaches me to be patient and present, you know, completely present and mindful about, you know, where I'm going. Right.
Yeah, I was watching your video and watching how you were cutting. I'm like, that's where I started. Like, that's just like Scratchboard in a way, because the thought process is opposite to what you would do if you were painting an oil painting or a watercolor, and you have to. You really have to think.
Right.
Well, the cutting thing is interesting. Nancy we did a tour when we lived in South Africa with her art, and she would take commissions, and that was it. After she was like, that's it, I'm done. Because commissions can kill the artist's soul, you know. But she was raising money for the Cancer Association doing this, and I was a kid and I was selling her art, you know. And but she did, to make quick cash, this was the fundraiser, was cutting people's silhouettes. They would sit there and she would take black paper, and I was in charge, cut the little black squares, scissors, and she would sit, and within 2-3 minutes, they would have a silhouette, the black, and we'd put it on white and frame it and all of that. And that is like a whole other interesting thing, because you're not seeing them. She didn't have all the fancy lighting. We couldn't take that everywhere we went.
Yeah.
you had this, you're cutting this profile on a, isn't that kind of in a way what you're doing too? Because I find some of what you're doing very, your work really resonates with like some of the tech. I got really into jewelry and textiles of Africa. And I got into this whole symbology of the meaning of a pattern, a design. People would buy the cloth and go, oh, that's really pretty. I'm going to make a dress. And I'm like, actually, this means this, 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 this. And I got so involved in the stories that I never got anywhere. I just got into each thing told a story. And your art, some of the way the flow and the image, the imagery is very symbolic to me. It's very African to me, or should I say ethnic, maybe is the word. That's just, it just takes me home. And that's kind of what you're doing with that cutting too, Nancy, what you do with cutting. It's like you have to get down to it,
Right. Yeah, with the pattern work, actually there's a lot of similarities between, and I think that's maybe the reason why it's easier for museums to sort of put their African art collections and oceanic art collections together. Because if you look at like a lot of what we call ki'i, or like images in Hawaii, there are a lot of similarities between certain tribal groups within Africa. And even our pattern work, like a lot of the geometry is very similar. And while it may have like completely different meanings, in some cases, like there are very sort of universal things that are sort of, happening between, both the Pacific island continent, we'll say, because I view the whole ocean and all of our ancestors and relatives throughout the Pacific as, just one giant continent, but in the African continent. So, I mean, off the top of my head, I can think of maybe 13 patterns that are like identical.
Wow, really?
And while like the meanings may mean something totally different culturally, there are certain things that are like sun motifs or sun patterns, right? Certain triangle patterns that I'm guessing symbolize as well, like more ideas of like warfare or like standing strong, and things of that nature, or even mountain symbolism,
Well, do you think it's also, when you look at civilization, because if you look at Celtic symbology, right? And it goes with their environment and what they're living through. So that's going more of this ancient times. And if you go like I know you're based in Santa Fe, right? Or lived in Santa Fe?
Yeah, so I'm kind of, my main practice currently is, it's between Santa Fe, New Mexico currently, or Ogopoga Owinge, which means White Shell Water Place, and Tewa. And so I'm between there, and then I'm in like the San Francisco Bay Area as well, like because I have family in like Berkeley and stuff. So like my mother's based out of Berkeley, so I spend time between those two places a lot. And then whenever I can get back to Hawaii, this is where I ideally like to be.
You're traveling around. You're like us. It's cool. When you're in Santa Fe, have you been to Chaco?
I haven't been to Chaco, but two of my friends actually did the artist residency in Chaco. So, my friend Rose B. Simpson.
Oh, she was on our show. Yeah, she was.
Yeah, and
my friend too.
And my friend Jason Garcia.
Oh yeah, he's been on our show as well. Yes.
Right.
Cool.
Yeah. So they're both friends of mine.
Yeah, Cody Simpson is Cody's out there too. I don't know if you know him. He's out.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, but my point was going to Chaco, like going to some of these ruins, and how some of the, if you see the pictographs and rock art in those imagery, right? That imagery, and even just how some of the ceremonial structures are. I feel like maybe it's just like this ancient way of communication. It's like the Rosetta Stone in this interesting way, which is still this artistic way. And then in some part of our societal sides, and depending on what country or ethnicity, that kind of got into, we're going back to text messaging, which is like that in a way, but we kind of lost that as a source of communication, because look at all the war and everything that has happened between cultures. And so I feel like there is this, I wonder if you put the Celtic with the African and then the Hawaiian and even Aboriginal art, if if we get back to our roots, wouldn't it all connect in some way?
I believe it would, you know, because
Mhm.
I think that we're sort of limited in the idea of how we view knowledge sharing now. I
Yeah.
believe that there are, you know, ancient trade routes that took place between so many different, you know, civilizations or, you know, tribal peoples in general. And that within that sharing of information, I mean, you know, like there's to make a point, like there are like certain moments in individual histories where it's not, we don't know for sure, it's not definitive, but say certain California native tribes, right?
Mhm.
There's a certain portion in their history, well, some tribes where their canoe building became totally different, and their fishhook styles became totally different,
Mhm.
and it has to come from, because if it was like a completely cultural and spiritual thing within within their own community, and somebody else came, there had to be some sort of understanding and shift, you know, and influence from another people, right? So take for instance, like there's the Thule
Mhm.
like canoes in certain parts of California,
Mhm.
and then at one point they became plank wood or hold out canoes, you know, that they called like tomals, or like, you know, I forget the other names of them, you know. But then even like similarities in certain stories from like California tribes of like a rainbow bridge, which we also have stories of those things. The Navajo
Mhm.
have stories of these things as well. So, you know, like there's all these interconnected and shared stories. Macaw feathers, you know, which are
Right.
hugely part of like the Pueblo communities of like New Mexico. You know, there's no macaw in that region.
From
Exactly.
South
You know, so
America
that
too.
had to be
Yeah.
it had to be trade route.
Traded.
Mhm.
Yeah.
The cacao that they're finding in Chaco Canyon, right?
Mhm.
Like
Mhm.
that only took place because of trade routes. And
Mhm.
so, you know, we have influenced each other, and our individual communities have influenced each other, I believe, through trade, intermarriage,
Mhm.
um, and you know, and that's all like architectural influences, clothing influences, you know,
Mhm.
because
I just feel like there's been such bloodshed, right? And I
right.
know a lot of your art also goes into forgiveness, because
Mhm.
you can't really move forward until there's got to be something, right? And at the same time, when we look at all this connectivity, you just share it, right?
Right.
Through art, is there a possibility through art that we can remind each other that we're all connected?
Well, I believe that art is, you know, it is a great healer.
Mhm.
Music is a great healer. Dance is
Mhm.
a great healer. You know what I mean? So anything that sort of requires, again, like the mind to like you to go inward and express outward in
Mhm.
a creative manner, you know, there you could find healing there. Um, are we going to be able to reach every single individual, or is every individual on the planet going to be able to like um, pick up on what you're trying to put out? No, most definitely not. But that's the reason why it's so beautiful that there are so many different types of creators out there, right?
Mm-hmm.
So where I have the honor and privilege in Kuali'i to, you know, like sort of do what I do to help empower and bring visibility to my own people, and also kind of bring outsiders in so they understand, you know, certain aspects of our history and culture. Not everybody's going to pick up on that, and not everybody's going to like fully, it's not going to fully resonate with, you know, certain types of individuals. So for them, the healing of art practice, and the way it hits them visually and emotionally will come from a whole different place, right?
Well, you know, it's interesting. If you go to an art gallery or an art show, or you go to a concert, you're listening to different kinds of music, you can be seated or standing next to a complete stranger and looking or enjoying the same thing and comment on it. And you may differ completely politically and in a whole lot of different beliefs.
Right.
But at the same time, you're enjoying this piece of art or you're enjoying this piece of music, and you can talk to each other on a level that gets rid of all the other side of stuff that you probably can't talk about.
Right.
You know, so there that you can make a bond there through art and an appreciation of it, which goes a long way to me, that leads to a more peaceful existence for everybody.
Right.
Because
Well, I mean,
at
you know,
least
just
it's a ground where you can talk to each other, and then maybe everybody will soften down a little bit so they can talk about other things that are kind of difficult to talk about.
right. And like you're saying too, with you know, like maybe two different walks of life, right?
Yeah.
But you made the conscious decision to come to the same place. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah.
So like, you know, there's something else energetically that is definitely taking shape and taking form. And you know, again, like I mean, because I've been in many scenarios like that you had just mentioned, and we perceive art pieces totally different, right? But at the same time, there's still like that root of appreciation. And then, you know, we chose to come to this space, not knowing each other, coming from two different walks of life, to sort of appreciate and engage, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's something to be said about that as well, as far as like
I like it.
healing. And you know, we're not always going to agree, but there are certain levels of, I guess, like, you know, for lack of a better word, like diplomacy that needs to be had within those spaces. And it's only through you know, communication that we'll ever fully get beyond, you know, our differences. And I mean, we'll never fully get beyond our differences. I mean, how long have human beings been in existence?
Killing each
And
other for
we're
years.
still- and we're still butting heads.
We've been enslaving and killing each other for
I mean, but how boring would it
hundreds
be
of
if
years.
we were all the same?
No,
You
we
know,
can't.
Right.
we should be actually celebrating
Well,
and being happy about differences as
That's-
opposed to unhappy.
That's the other
Most
beauty of
definitely.
the arts. The
Yeah.
arts bring out
And
things
that's
like,
what the
gosh, I
arts-
never thought of this, or you
That's
know,
what the arts do.
the
to me.
arts.
Right.
Yeah, if everyone was the same, we wouldn't have art. Unless
Well,
we
it
were
would
just
be,
one, you
wouldn't
know.
it be boring if we were all the same?
It would be boring. I feel,
Yeah.
you know, I mean, and that's the thing is, right, we can't,
I mean, really.
we should be honoring both the similarities and the differences of each
Right.
other, right?
Mhm.
Instead of, I mean, you know, I think like we operate from positions of hoarding power, like far too often, or
Yeah.
what we perceive as power, you know, where I feel like I operate from a different concept, and I don't even really like to use the term power. You know, like I've heard just recently like the term power couple, right? So I'm
Yeah.
like, you
Yeah.
know,
Oh
like,
God. God, it's so
power
gross.
couple.
Oh, that's a Hollywood thing, right? It's always,
That's
it's the
funny.
power couple, and then a year later they've powered each other out.
Yeah.
You know, but that power, yeah, but that is this, you know, the superpower country, and it's like it takes humanity out of it, you know. And who wants to be the power couple? Because the expectation now is so great if you buy into it and believe in the power couple.
But the
persona,
power thing, I mean,
right?
the word power has really negative connotations to it.
Right.
I like the
You know,
word
the
empower.
the power monger.
Impact,
You
positively
know,
impact
somebody who
and
has
power.
to, no, but people who have to grab power always come off to me as very insecure.
Most definitely. And you know, it's like there are like actual powers in this universe that are
Yes.
infinitely like how arrogant of us as human beings to like even, you know, talk about like power
Yeah,
when we
really.
don't understand. We don't
Okay,
understand.
listen, look, our background is, look, this is
Yeah.
where you are. We're here, we
Right.
have this crater, we've got a volcano that says, listen, if I'm gonna do my thing, here it is. I'm gonna be active, I'm gonna rock and roll, and I'm gonna spew lava, hot lava, I'm gonna
Yeah.
do this.
That's power.
So I think
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
something about, again, like humanity connecting in nature and going to these parks. It's a humbling experience in these
Right.
places. And I think the more we go into nature, the more we realize this, you've got to, the need for control, get over it.
Well, it's
Most
like in the
definitely.
face of a hurricane. Okay, so let's take the most whoever you think is the most powerful person on earth. Like you can take a president of the United States or any country. So you're the most powerful person right now. Please go stop that hurricane.
Yeah, please go.
Go ahead.
Go
I wanna
stop the
watch.
tornado.
I want to watch. I wanna
Yeah.
watch.
You know.
Right.
You know.
Right.
So we are not.
Mm.
You know, we have apparently, according to a lot of people, we have more brains or more smarts than animals, and that may or may not be true. This depends on how you're supposed to live within the abilities that you have. So I don't call that power. I call it existing or just survival and getting along. Power to me is like you have to take somebody else out.
Right.
You
Well, I guess
know,
like when we talk about power in nature, you know, like we
yeah,
definitely have zero control. Like we as human
yeah,
beings, in my opinion, are in a weird way, because you know we could talk about things like the in our Hawaiian belief system, like in our creation story, like the Kumulipo, right?
mhm,
We are actually the youngest of all the earthly relatives, like all out
Mm.
of everything here. You know what I mean? Like we
Oh,
are
I
the
like
youngest,
that. Yeah, yeah,
and
mhm,
we
so
are. Yeah, it's true
yeah,
though. I
and
mean,
so we have the great responsibility to actually make sure that everything that are older, that are our elders that are older than us, are taken care of. You know what I mean? But I think like at some point, and I can only speak for like my understanding of certain things culturally within that are native Hawaiian, that are Kanaka, right? Like uh, in a lot of ways, we perverted that so-called power, right? Like
yeah,
we've taken it like full advantage of it, and
mhm,
you know, like this planet will do fine without us.
mm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
But like, you
yeah.
know,
probably,
we have this great ability and like responsibility and capability of actually doing right by it, you know.
mhm,
Mm.
And
mhm,
What I want to ask you, I want to talk about where you are now, and you're in
mhm,
Mhm.
the art house, the awesome art house.
right.
Is that
It is.
Hawaiian coffee that we keep hearing about? That's from down the road or something? Everybody keeps talking about that coffee, that it's good. All the
Yeah,
artists that you're drinking. What is it? Is it
yeah.
as
So
good as everybody says?
it's all 100% from this region, from Ka'u,
Mm.
the Ka'u Forest area, and yeah, it's delicious. It is delicious, and
Should we be
Oh,
jealous?
I mean,
probably.
yes, you should be, because I will, you
That's
know,
a good human trait.
I'm a bit biased, but like I think Hawaiian coffee is the best coffee on the planet. I
Okay.
I truly do. And
Mm,
you know, and that's not to say, because I love a good Mexican coffee, you know, I
Oh
love a
yeah.
mhm,
oh yeah,
mhm,
I mean, you know,
Mhm.
but there's just something about the rich volcanic soil of
mhm,
Mm.
Hawaii, that, and the climate itself, you know, it's like it's the only place in the so-called United States, right, in the that can actually grow coffee and grow cacao. And so, you know,
mm,
That's pretty good. That's
mm.
pretty good. Well, we lived in Africa or Kenya where we had coffee, tea,
right,
Yeah, they had good
mangoes, and
coffee.
avocados. That
right.
to
Mm,
me now, and
mm,
passion fruit. To me, that's heaven right there. I don't
mm.
need anything else. Well, I like my wine. I need my wine, but other than that, I'm good. But no,
Right.
you gotta have wine somewhere. But
Well, actually, in Kenya, you could grow anything. It was
anything, we
right
were
on
very
the
like,
equator, and
yeah,
it was just so easy to grow anything you wanted.
it was
Right.
awesome.
Yeah, I mean, it's that thing, right? It's between
Yeah.
like the Tropic of Cancer and
Mhm.
the
Yeah.
equator, is
Yeah.
that really nice,
Ooh,
That was
fertile. It
awesome.
doesn't matter where you are on the planet, as long as
Yeah.
you follow that belt across, you
Yeah.
it's
know,
It
just
just,
you'll be
magic.
good.
It is magical for
mm,
you, and you've do this art where, and I want to go to Hawaii with this too, but where you're out in nature and creating like
mm,
earth, I was like earth art. I don't know what quite to call it, an earth installation, but it that goes back to also those symbolic that the icon. I don't know what you say, how you pronounce, or what is it? I don't know how to explain it other
Right. So
than
I do these like earthworks
yeah,
pieces
earthworks. There you go.
that are completely ephemeral. And so there's like zero, like technically zero impact on the environment.
mm,
And they are completely composed freehand. They're typically like just our geometric patterns placed on the land using nothing but organic material from that actual area itself.
mhm,
And so they're composed completely of things that are already in existence and already there. I'm not bringing anything in with me, except for maybe like a 5-gallon bucket to pick up trash as I'm composing and I'm in prayer the whole time. And so like maybe one area, say I'm composing, I don't know, like a 20 foot by 40 foot earthworks piece, I will clean probably 5 to 6 times as much land, of like human waste or any sort of debris that shouldn't be there,
Right.
and so while I'm doing this, I'm like in complete prayer, in total, like I'm usually alone. There's been a couple times where I've had like my former partner with me, and then I mean it's a super healing and beautiful experience. It's actually some of the most gratifying and personal healing work that that I do. So in a weird way, it's kind of like a selfish thing for me as well. Like,
well, it seems very meditative
because
because you're in with nature. And that's why I wanted to talk about
Right.
that, and also talk about picking up trash, like picking up and cleaning up the land, and you see what's going on with humans, and then you kind of go, okay, they do that. So it's like you're rectifying it. It's like giving the land back. And so there's a human connection and this positivity, right, that you're bringing into the place, but you're also connecting with nature. I mean, you're seeing little flowers here and there. You're seeing ants. You're seeing the beetles, right? I know you're seeing some of that.
Definitely, of
And
course.
so there's this communal, and if you're on your own, there's that zone, right, where you're kind of like you would talk to the ant at that point, right? Like, I don't know. I'm like,
I mean, I
okay.
talk to him anyway. Like anywhere I walk,
Okay.
And again, I was having this conversation just recently with Kuali'i, the kapa maker, and it's hilarious because we would have these conversations about our own personal sort of, when we go out into nature, like what ends up happening. And I'm like, I'm one of those people that I'll just, I'm like in my own space and I'm walking and I'm enjoying nature. And then all of a sudden, or maybe I'm with somebody and we're having like a conversation while walking through nature, but at a sort of a low volume, so we're not interrupting some of the other things. And then, like I could be in like mid conversation with this individual, and then all of a sudden, like something catches like me out of the side of my eye, and I'm like, ooh, flower, like, who are you? You know what I mean?
See,
like,
exactly.
And then, and then you're walking towards this amazing flower, and you're having a conversation with it, like, who are you? Like, how long have you been here? Like, you're so beautiful. Like, thank you for presenting yourself to me, because, at the same time, I'm like in another space. And so it took their energy to like knock me on the side of my head, right? To like
look at me.
Exactly.
Sure.
Yeah, because it's this communication, and I believe you do get something out of it. I think that especially if you're in a more of a meditative state, where in other words, where you're really focused on that individual, whether it's a flower, a bug, whatever, and it's this space. And then if you're actually working in the space, they start to recognize you more in what you're doing.
And they're curious.
They're curious.
They're curious. They come out to see what you're doing.
Yeah, most definitely. We Lehua and I, like we were just in Kilauea, like Volcanoes National Park, and we went for the like crater rim hike. And it was exactly that. While there were a bunch of tourists that were there doing their thing as well, getting their Hawaiian experience, and maybe didn't fully understand sort of like certain protocols when it comes to those spaces, being kind of loud on the trail, or not taking up the whole trail as well. So it's like really difficult for you to kind of get around them. And it was incredible. Like, we would get to these spaces where, and we'd both been there before, as like younger, being of Hawaiian ancestry, but we would get to these spaces where we would just completely stop. We would have to just stop because something would just like tell us to stop, like stop us dead in our tracks. And then the gust of wind would come through, and it would then it was like silence. And then the birds, all you heard were the birds.
Yeah. And they're talking about it.
Amongst the ohia, so you're like listening to, to like, I don't know, 100 birds all chirping and like communicating with each other, and like knowing that like it's not our space to speak right now, it's their turn to speak, and just listen and take it in, right? And so it's happened many times on the trail, among a few other kind of interesting things that I'm probably not at liberty to speak of, because they were
they
were truly they were maybe off record. We can talk about it. 'Cause it was-
Well, I mean, because
Okay.
this is, because going back to, the earthworks, let's go back to, I
Right.
got the word now. What's interesting too about that is that's temporary art because it's out of nature and it's gonna now
Mhm.
move.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
so that's kind of interesting when you think about Hawaii and the volcanoes, things that really shows how things
Shift.
move. And
Mhm.
nature's always shifting.
Yeah.
It's even though things are still the same, like birds will nest and come to the same place for hundreds of years, that family will keep going until we,
Mhm.
pave paradise, as we're doing very well at. But when you're in a park or
Mhm.
something that's protected, they have that, obviously climate change is shifting, but so we realize that things are temporary, yet they're still here. And I think that's something beautiful about what you're doing because, like, I remember, here, the first temporary art, I think I really got it was probably actually in Santa Fe. And I kept going like, well, why would you want temporary art? Why would you want it to go away? I want art to be here forever. But it symbolized to me, depending on what it was, what the first thing was on climate change, polar bear melting. And it does symbolize that things, like all things shall pass. And at the same time, harmony can continue through. And I feel
Right.
like,
But
yeah,
it also says to you, hey, you're not going to be here forever. Get on with it.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. There
So
is
there's all sorts of ways to look at something like
yeah,
when something's not permanent. It's
for
a
you,
reminder.
what was the impetus to do that?
well, I mean, there is sort of just like the both of you are kind of touching on is there is that beauty in the impermanence of it all, right?
Yeah.
So like while life will continue, life like you will one day be gone, right? And so
Right.
appreciate life, but like and not in a selfish way, not in a selfish manner. Like there has to be the understanding that one day you will be gone, but there also has to be the understanding that try to walk lightly, as lightly as possible in this world and with as much reverence as possible. Like none of us are perfect and we're constantly learning and unlearning things, and we might not always be the nicest people. We all have those moments where we're either opinionated or angry or upset. Every emotion is valid, but one day you will be gone, so appreciate it. So I think for me it is one of those things where these are uh, land is audience more than when I compose these earthworks. It's land as audience, and me creating these things for the land, like to show respect, and thank the land that I have the honor and privilege of walking on. Again, as lightly as possible, and cleaning up and apologizing for this consistent mess that we make as human beings.
Especially in the deserts. What's going on with the trash in the
darn.
deserts is insane.
It's
Right.
crazy.
There's insane. I mean, what they outside Joshua Tree and we used to see just washing machines and suitcases.
Yeah,
it's like insanity.
It's not just like
it's like
a
actual
potato
dumping.
chip bag.
And the
it's
desert
actual furniture
to me is this magic land.
Yeah.
Well, I think all land is like that, but
Right.
and there is something about it where when you're doing that kind of work, where you're really absorbed in nature, are you feeling like the people that, because you've got to think everywhere we've been, don't someone's walked over there. Like I want to know, like who was here? Like I know, because especially if you're near water, there's certain pathways for people throughout history. Battlegrounds are crazy, creepy, and yet at the same time, people should go to them and feel that.
Right, because
there's
all
that feeling.
emotions are valid. You know
Right.
what I mean?
Right.
So step into those places that maybe also uncomfortable and historically have like ill histories to them, right? Like because even beyond all the impact that we've made as human beings and all of those things, all the ill that we've created, under the surface there is like that beautiful lesson and thing that we can learn from our ills, right? And there's also that beautiful layer that existed before all of those layers were built upon it, right? So once you can get to like beyond that stuff and heal those elements, you can get to the beauty again, right?
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just odd, like not odd, but I dig it because it just kind of makes you stop and think, because what we think is always so darn important really isn't half the time. You know
Well,
what I
it
mean?
might be
You
important
know, our
for
day to day kind of,
for
I mean, there's
yeah,
important stuff, but then the
but
stuff that
in
we
the
clog our lives up
yeah,
with, when you get
yeah,
into those spaces and really connect deeply, there is,
well, there's only so many things that you can totally relate to other people with. And, you know, color is an interesting one because there are a faction of people who are colorblind and they really can't see color. So now that they have to look for a different medium, they can see dark and light and charcoal sketches, but they can't really appreciate color like so many of the rest of us can. So there's so many different variants within people. There's so many different ways to communicate. So you've got music, but then you do have people who are deaf, but Beethoven, being deaf, still enjoyed music through
It's the
vibration.
yeah, the vibration.
Yeah, so you know, it's just the most any of us can do is put our best out there in a way that hopes to connect in a good way with other people.
Right.
And to I totally have, you know, for nature. I mean, every time somebody starts developing a new tract of land, I'm like, oh no. Because I know we need homes, but then we have a whole lot of vacant homes. So
Right. And that's, I think that for me, that's the biggest,
yeah,
it's
that
like how many, I mean, strip
yeah,
mall,
yeah.
brick
Oh
and
gosh.
mortar, like, you know,
Mm,
existence is like dwindling. And so there's so many shopping centers that are vacant. And so
I know.
why not just like, you know,
make 'em-
retrofit or like do whatever you can on that
Yeah,
some people are doing it.
pre-existing footprint?
They're doing
yeah.
it. They started after the 2008 crash. Some people have
Mm,
started to
Right.
do that. And I think that is amazing because they're building a community in a sense, which is nice.
yeah.
You know, I think
Mhm.
that's cool. But I'm going back to Hawaii. So going to get this residency, which is awesome. And
Right.
everyone should know your work is all over the world. You've worked with the Smithsonian. I saw that you're also in oh my gosh,
Mm.
the Heard Museum in Arizona, right?
Right.
You've been in all, you know, amazing Dublin, I mean, amazing places, but for you to take this residency obviously connects with you in your ancestry, your homeland as well.
Right.
But what was your idea going in? And because I know when artists are there, they have this vision. And what's great about the National Parks Arts Foundation is they're not going to go like, you said you would do exactly this. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
They
they let
understand an
you
artist's
change.
soul and mind and creative process. So is it stuck? Yeah. What did you go in with, and where are you? Where are you now?
So yeah, it's been actually I've been going through like some personal things in my life. So it's been like, first off, like a huge blessing to be here to reconnect on ancestral like spaces. You know, just to be able to reconnect that way and release and let go of so much, you know, personally. But I had this grand idea of doing a series of GPS like art pieces that were a combination of mapping endemic plants.
Oh wow.
Oh, I love that.
But also at the same time figuring out a way to create compositions that would lend into, again, like just geometric patterns or other things that relate to the specific region that I'm in. And it has turned out to be one of the most difficult projects that I've ever undertaken, because first off, I'm not very tech savvy. And so it's been a more like R&D than actual compositions themselves. I've gotten like a little thing with my GPS thing set up. Later on today, I will be going out to do more work to see if I can get it to operate the way I want it to operate. But again, we go back to the idea of control, right? So some things are out of our control. We just have to kind of work with it and make do with. But then also like my hand cut paper pieces, which I haven't really composed too many. So I will be getting back into that later on today as well, maybe later on in the evening when I'm a bit more decompressed from the other things.
I have an
Yeah,
idea
it's
for your
been
GPS.
wonderful.
After this, I'll tell you what because I've had the same issue,
Yeah.
and so I found a shortcut. It might help you. I don't know, but it's I don't know, but it does help, and
Mhm.
it's managed to help me.
One of
in
the other things
weird ways.
one of the other things that happened was I received my knighthood with the Royal Order of the Crown of Hawaii.
Oh.
And so that
Wow.
happened at the end of last year, but I was waiting for my royal insignia to arrive while I was still in Santa Fe, New Mexico, but it didn't arrive before the artist residency. So I was
Mm.
able to have it delivered
Can we see?
Oh, cool.
delivered to me while here in Hawaii.
Oh, that's neat.
So yeah, I got to pick it up from
Oh wow,
Oh,
how
nice.
beautiful! That's cool,
Wow.
dude.
Cool.
Like that's real bling. Screw all
That's
the other
cool.
bling. That's real stuff, man.
That's
Right.
awesome.
So how does that happen? How does that come to be? I mean, this is, because we think
you
about
basically
England
right.
and the royals, right? And then, the royals, I mean, you've got to think about the queens and this now, I don't, oh, there's, I
Be
don't,
careful.
I won't, I'm not,
Be
I'm just going
careful.
to shut up right now. So how does
So,
that happen was my question.
Right. So I mean, I don't think when you go into the history of Hawaii, you'll find that we were a constitutional monarchy, and our relationship was deep with the British monarchs,
Mhm.
like to the point where I forget whose coronation it was, but couple, like one, two, I believe it was like three of the individuals from the royal court went to one of the coronations during the Victorian era, and there are even like royals that were the godchildren of like Queen Victoria and things, and actually held the middle name Victoria because it was to honor Victoria. And so we had that relationship with the British monarchs for a long time. And yeah, so the way that this came about was my mother is actually a dame within the order already, and I was able to attend the first investiture that took place at Iolani Palace on the island of Oahu in like the Coronation Pavilion area, which is like the Royal Bandstand area, of the new people within the order. And it hadn't happened in, I believe it was like 125 years. It was the first time it happened in 125 years.
Oh my gosh.
And so, yeah, I got to witness that. And then just being there and being in the presence of other individuals and seeing like people who brought like their royal insignia that had been passed down through their family line from, say, King David Kalakaua. You know what I mean? I got to like be there in the presence of some of these original insignia. I like immediately clicked to me. I'm like, I need to work towards this. I already have like this great kuleana or honored responsibility to do this work for, our people, our land. But I can do a lot more work with this title. Because like certain individuals that I don't have access to will take me a bit more serious now that I have my knighthood. And so I can use that to the benefit of our people as well. So I just need to work super hard and diligent towards this. And then, yeah, last year I was offered my knighthood. And so from the work that I've been doing, and so, yeah, now I just have to continue to do the work.
Well, I think
Yeah.
that's what's so great about what you're doing is that you're very driven, but with a conscience and integrity for the land and people. And I think that's, sometimes that could go out the wayside as you start getting in places like the Smithsonian and stuff like that. Sometimes people don't hold that integrity as they move forward. Yet you seem very driven, but at the same time, that integrity is there. And that I really appreciate that about you.
Yes.
Is
holding
that.
I get that. I get that from my mother. The work that my mother has been doing, which she does in both native health, arts and culture. She was the diplomatic liaison for the Hawaiian sovereignty movement group, Kalahui Hawaii, with the Trask sisters and Senator Kalani English, but this was before he was Senator Kalani English. But she was the diplomat for Kalahui Hawaii for like Native America. So she was the one that would set up, like relations between different reservations and tribal nations.
That's awesome.
And so, like seeing and experiencing what my mother was doing with a lot of these individuals who are part of the order as well now, and knowing that, again, like I passed through the gates, right? And I passed through the gates because of the work that my mother has done. And so again, like for like, and the idea of responsibility and the idea of integrity, I'm not just walking in alone as an individual and being puffed up and arrogant or ego driven or these things. Like, I'm walking in with my mother's name, my mother's mother's name, her, my great grandmother,
It's a lineage.
and so forth. So of course, so like when you're passing through these doors, you always need to remember that it's not your feet alone that are walking through those doors.
That's beautiful.
And that, again, like the land that we were born of, not, like we carry that with us as well. So the people and the land are one and the same. So yeah.
See, now that's
integrity needs to be
powerful.
upheld.
That's
Right.
true powerful. See, it's the empowerment. That's the powerful, not the other powerful. You got to get, you see, there's power with integrity and passion for what you're doing, and a soul, compassion. You've got to have compassion to have power. I really believe that. And you definitely have. Congratulations. Now, would you do another residency?
I would love to do another residency. Actually, I would really love to do the Haleakala one, because, while my family, the Kuali'i line, like our root island is, well, the island that we primarily stem from is the island of Oahu. I was raised more so on the island of Maui, right? So for me to be able to do the artist residency in Haleakala would be unbelievable. And I've applied before. I was a finalist for the Haleakala one some years back, but obviously didn't receive it. But I would love to revisit it. And
See, I
we
love-
have connections.
That's amazing
We
what
have
you're saying.
connections as well too. Sorry. go ahead.
just artists need to understand that, you apply.
You just keep reapplying.
It just keep reapplying until it gets there, because it's always changing, right? Here we go.
I would like to see you do the Chaco one.
I want to see you do the Chaco one too.
Yeah, because we've been there,
me.
and that's a very deep,
And I actually think
deep
even dry tortugas would
feeling
be
place.
interesting for you to be on an island out at sea and see what that's like.
Right, and that's in the Caribbean, right?
Yeah, boy, it's in Florida, South Florida.
Right.
So you're on your Loggerhead Key. You have to go by boat. You have to learn all this hurricane preparedness. You've got the work, drive to do it.
The Chaco one, there's when you go to Chaco and you go into the ruins, there's such vibes there.
Man,
that is a place that would
you need to go there,
would
even just when you go
resonate
home to
with
Santa Fe.
you. Right.
Yeah, I
because-
feel like if I was to go to Chaco though, like knowing who I am and what I do, that some of the spirits that exist there might be so comfortable that they're like, oh, we're gonna come home with you for a bit.
Yeah.
We're gonna
I think-
attach ourselves onto you and come home with
It's
you for a
like,
bit.
oh, hello, we moved
No, I think
in.
you dig it.
But but it's because it is a very emotional experience.
Right.
It really is.
It is, and it's emotional, but it's freeing, and everybody has their own
wonderful.
thing. But all I know is I want to go back. Like I just wanted to stay there, and we
I would love, like, between the other. I mean, I would love to do any of the national parks,
of course,
residencies, and I do agree with you. Like, even if you do apply and you don't receive it, just keep on applying.
Exactly.
Keep on applying, because you
never know.
You never know. I mean, the reality is like you will never receive it, right, if you don't apply. So
exactly.
Continue to apply. But I think for me personally, like Haleakala, just because again of my connection to this place, to Hawaii and to the island of Maui. But yeah, being a current resident of that region, in the so-called Southwest, right? Like, yeah, Chaco Canyon is definitely the other one. And, I'm like, when it comes to, celestial architecture as well, you know what I mean? Like architecture that's, that's, to me, that's, yeah.
There's
All right,
vibes
this
there.
is
I'm
cool.
telling
That's
you,
cool.
there's vibes.
Oh man. Well, Ian, tell everybody how to follow you on Instagram. What's your handle?
My handle is just my name. It's at Ian, IAN, Kuali'i. That's Kualii. And so, yeah, I typically curate my Instagram page where I only post art related things on the actual profile itself. And then my IG stories portion, my Instagram stories portion is sort of like the 24-hour like sort of glimpse into my everyday life. And so, I won't post any super personal stuff except for art related things on the profile. And then IG is that sharing, the other sharing.
Awesome. Well, thank you for joining us.
Yeah.
I know you've got to go play with plants now and, GPSs and all kinds of good stuff. And then you're going to cut some paper, man. Watch out with that knife. But It's been a true pleasure. And everyone, again, keep up with the National Parks Arts Foundation. They are awesome. And it's National Parks artsfoundation.org, and keep up with us at bigblendradio.com. We air daily at 7 p.m. Eastern time, 4 p.m. Pacific time, because we're absolutely nuts. But every first Friday is our show with the National Parks Arts Foundation. Thanks so much, Ian.
Mahalo.
Yeah, take care.